back to Stories for Shabbos. Rabbi Akiva Eiger was best known for his brilliance in Torah. He was considered one of the greatest geniuses the Jewish people have ever had. He was a master of all of Torah. Remember, we read a book about him about a year ago? And all the stories were about his incredible commitment to learning Torah and his unbelievable achievements in Torah study and knowledge, and all of that is amazing. But he also was an amazing tzaddik with wonderful midos and did lots of chesed. The truth is, anybody, in order to be a master of Torah, you can't just study Torah, but you have to also be a master of midos. That even comes first, before Torah learning, is being a mensch. So I'm going to tell you a story about Rabbi Akiva Eiger, not today about his Torah learning, but about his midos and his chesed. You ready? See, Rabbi Akiva Eiger lived in the 1700s. So when he wanted to get from one place to another, you couldn't fly in a plane. You couldn't take a car. You couldn't even call an Uber. There was no Uber back in the 1700s. So when he wanted to get from one town to another town, you had to ask a guy who had a horse, and he would attach his horse to a wagon or to a carriage, and you would pay him a few coins, and he would sit in his carriage, and he would ride you from one town to another town. So Rabbi Akiva Eiger one day was traveling from one town to another town in a carriage with a man who was driving the horse, and it was a very cold day, and it started to rain very hard. Perfect story for this week, when it was cold and rainy most of the week. But this was in Europe. And they didn't have cars with heaters and windshield wipers. So it was getting very hard to see where they were going. And they were very cold and wet. And then the wagon got stuck in some mud. And the horse couldn't pull it anymore. So the wagon driver had to climb down from the wagon and start digging the wheel out so that they can get back onto a better road and they can continue traveling. And it was so rainy and it was so muddy that the rain and the mud went all the way up half of his leg by the time he got the wheel out of the mud. So when he got back into the wagon, he was drenched and he was dirty. And a couple minutes later, Rabbi Akiva Eiger said to him, "Here, take these. I see your socks are soaking wet and muddy. I have a clean pair of socks for you." And the man said, "Thank you so much." He thought it was his lucky day. Rabbi Akiva Eiger, for some reason, must have had an extra pair of socks in his bag that he was giving to the wagon driver, and his socks were so wet and so dirty, he was very thankful. And they traveled for another couple of hours until finally they got to the place where Rabbi Akiva Eiger was going. And when they got there, the wagon driver was helping him climb down from the wagon. Off he come. And he noticed that Rabbi Akiva Eiger was wearing shoes and wasn't wearing socks. And he said, "I thought you had an extra pair of socks that you gave me. Did you take your own socks off your own feet to give me?" And Rabbi Akiva Eiger said, "Don't worry about it. No big deal. I saw that your socks were wet. I'm sure you must have been cold. I was happy to give you my socks." Now what's so amazing about this story is not just how generous he was, and not how quickly he was willing to share his socks, the socks off his very feet, and I'm sure he was cold too, with his nice wagon driver. I don't know if his wagon driver was a big tzaddik. I don't even know if his wagon driver was Jewish, but Rabbi Akiva Eiger was willing to share with him right away. But to me, what's even more amazing is that he was happy to do this chesed without anybody knowing about it. You know, in the end, the wagon driver found out about it only because he happened to notice that Rabbi Akiva Eiger was wearing shoes without socks. But if he hadn't noticed at that moment, he never would have even known. Sometimes people are willing to do chesed or help out a friend or give tzedakah or visit somebody, but they like everybody to know about it. "Hey, I did a mitzvah today. I did chesed. Isn't everybody proud of me?" But the best way, the most beautiful way to do a mitzvah, and especially the most beautiful way to help somebody else, is when you do it even though you don't care. And you don't need anybody else to applaud you, or to pat you on the back, or to even know that you did it. You did it because it's the nice thing to do. You did it because it's the right thing to do. Rabbi Akiva Eiger saw that his wagon driver had cold feet, and he decided, I'm going to give him the socks off my own feet, and I'm not even going to make a big deal about it. That is Rabbi Akiva Eiger, the great Talmid Chacham, and the wonderful tzaddik. Good Shabbos, everybody.